what they're talking about, bringing them to military bases and what have you. That's a mistake, because what happens if we find some information that says, no, this person should not be allowed to stay in the U.S.? What do we do with them then? They're already here. We're not going to deport them to Afghanistan.
Mark,
this is why we need to focus on third country processing. Yeah. Then we pick who we bring into the U.S.
Mark, have you seen any indication that the Biden administration has that third country option, or is looking at some sort of a way station approach for some of these folks?
To some degree, yes. I mean, that came up, for instance, recently when they paused the flights out of the airport because the airport in Qatar, in Doha, was so overwhelmed with people because that's where we were taking them. So this is another area where the kind of planning and preparation that was necessary didn't happen.
Just didn't happen.
You need to work with places like Pakistan, Tajikistan, what have you, and say, okay, let's send this many here, that many there. We've done some of that, but it's rushed and at the last minute instead of giving ourselves a couple of months to work on this.
Yeah, it's a total free-for-all, unfortunately, and a real another humanity. Seems to be a champion for women, but abandoned Afghan women to the brutal Taliban. Kerry, welcome to you. Certainly wish that we were talking about something else. This has been a very, very difficult week. There are 15 million women and girls in Afghanistan who, for the last 20 years, have enjoyed rights that they've never known, and now those are going to be stripped away. The president assures us that the safety of women and children is a top concern for this White House.
Do anything. And this is just par for the course when it comes to Democrats and taking care of women. So Biden spent his career going out there and saying, hey, I championed the Violence Against Women Act. Hey, I'm going to tour college campuses speaking out against rape. I'm going to go and make sure that every Me Too allegation, I believe the women, I empower women. That's his whole message, his whole mantra. But over and over, we see that it's a lie. So par for the course, the Taliban is trying to say, oh, we're going to respect women. This is a lie, because we know from 1996 to 2001, when the Taliban ruled Afghanistan already, we saw what they did to women. They treated them as subhuman, as second class. If you're treated when the United States was in control or helping the Afghan government that just got overthrown, it was a totally different experience, as you said at the top of the segment.
Yeah, and I want to just be clear, it's our forces, it's our participation in the coalition that helped bring rights to those 15 million women and girls, and they're treated like property under Sharia law. In his speech today, Biden also brought up the idea that this kind of sounds like, let's make a deal. I mean, did the President of the United States really just say that these folks who rape and who kill, who maim, who strip women of their rights are perhaps going to be getting maybe taxpayer money to support them if they behave a certain way? I thought we were getting out of there to save money to begin with. Your comments in reaction to what you heard from the president.
No, I actually think we're going to end up spending even more. And now it's going to be blood money, because it's going to be money that's going to be held in the hands of terrorists who then will use the money to then beat and abuse and rape women and abuse their male citizens as well, with no human rights. So this is purposeful. What Joe Biden has done is purposeful. He overruled his military commanders. This is what all the intelligence is suggesting. He's known exactly what he's doing here. And the fact that, again, he champions women. I truly, truly hope next year in the election that those suburban women voters that we know were skeptical about, former President Trump and his mean tweets and things like that, suburban women, please pay attention. Please pay attention right now to what Joe Biden has done and his hypocrisy. Because when Donald Trump was president, you didn't see this. You didn't see the little baby with his diaper flapping in the wind while the heartbroken mother is giving up this child. You didn't see, there were, in the last year and a half, because of the stability that President Trump brought, we didn't have any American troops casualties. Right. We had the women of Afghanistan had civil rights when President Trump was there. Right. And when he laid out in very specific detail the plan that needed to happen to have conditions, that's what it's called, a conditional withdrawal. That's what President Trump put into place, and that's what Joe Biden rejected. And I hope that the suburban women, all the women, American voters who are watching this, do not forget this next year when it comes to election.
Okay, Kerry Sheffield, Senior Policy Analyst for the Independent Women's Forum. Appreciate your insights on this.
Thank you.
Coming up, the Taliban tonight on America First in the wake of U.S. beginning to arise and some right here at home. We already know of the crisis at our southern border. Now, as the Taliban lets loose hundreds of prisoners that we've captured in Afghanistan from a bunch of different terrorist groups, including ISIS, will this get even worse? Here to discuss this further is Mark Morgan. He's the former acting Customs and Border Patrol Commissioner and a Heritage Foundation visiting fellow. It's a long title.
Sure.
Mark, good to see you. We know that CPB has encountered people on the terror watch list attempting to cross the border, but the left has said repeatedly, and you listen to left-wing media, they say this idea of Islamic terrorists using the open border policy of this administration to the advantage of those terrorists is merely just a conspiracy theory. Tell me why that's wrong.
Well, Tom, they are wrong. And look, just like they're going to call us fearmongers when we start talking about we should be cautious about importing terrorists from Afghanistan, which I saw your earlier segment with the other Mark, spot on everything he said. Southwest border is the same thing. Look, the outgoing chief of the United States Border Patrol, Rodney Scott, 3 decades of honest and faithful service to this country, sent a message that you referred to his workforce that said, hey, we have a real national security threat on our southwest border. And he wasn't just hyperbole. He wasn't just rhetoric. He actually gave facts. And he talked about the 14 illegal aliens that the Border Patrol apprehended this fiscal year that are on the FBI's terror screening database. That's more than we've ever encountered. And right now, because of this administration's open border policies, look, the threat is real along the southwest border to be exploited.
You know, since taking over, the Taliban has emptied the prisons. The administration really doesn't want to talk about this too much, but the prisons were emptied in Afghanistan, and that we used those prisons to house insurgents, to house Islamic terrorists, and people who generally hate this country. If anything, knowing that fact should be more concerning to U.S. citizens, given the seemingly open border of the administration. Do you think that this is going to increase pressure on Biden to do something to stop the flow of illegals, or are they just committed to this for their own political purposes, regardless of the consequences?
Tom, I think you're right. I think it's been clear. I mean, it's all about perpetual political power. Look, the President of the United States, and I don't get joy saying this, lied to the American people. I mean, well, so many times today, he talks about like Al-Qaeda doesn't exist in Iraq.
Right.
We know the intelligence, the facts are clear that the Al-Qaeda is alive and well in Afghanistan. And the Taliban and Al-Qaeda, look, their resolve to continue to keep America in their crosshairs and do us harm is alive and well. And every single day, they were looking for opportunities and vulnerabilities in this country to exploit. Right. And right now, Tom, one of the largest vulnerabilities we have because of this administration is our southern border. That's right. Look, 50% of the Border Patrol are pulled off the line to process 212,000 apprehensions in a 30-day period. Think about it. Large areas of the border are wide open, unsecure. Border Patrol this fiscal year already have apprehended illegal aliens from 140 different countries. And again, those 14 TSDB hits, you bet it's a real threat.
You know, following the collapse of the Afghan security forces that were trained by the U.S., billions of dollars of weapons were also left behind and are now in the hands of the Taliban. Vehicles, firearms, communications gear, even military drones are now making up a large our own equipment from being used against us, Mark.
Tom, it's too late. They already have it. I mean, the Taliban now has more resources and are more connected to the southwest border and exploit the vulnerabilities. There is their access to intelligence and databases. Right now, we're being told that the biometric database that they have, that the U.S., by the way, helped Afghans implement is now in control of Taliban.
Yeah.
That's equally as concerning to us, besides the weapons they have. This is a catastrophe, and it's just made worse by the catastrophe that the Biden administration already created.
Yeah, it compounds an already horrible problem. Mark Morgan, former acting Customs and Border night of our series, The China Problem. You know, we had a Cold War to contain the spread of communism, to cripple its ability to influence the world. And yet today, China is currently the United States' third largest goods trading partner, with $558.1 billion in total two-way goods trade during 2019. Our economy is intertwined with that of a communist China. Now, make no mistake, they're thinking strategically and decades into the future on how to become the dominant economic and military force in the world. One such battleground, semiconductors. From a recent Senate Intelligence hearing on the threats China presents, take a listen.
Whether we're talking about synthetic biology or 6G, 7G, advanced materials and machine learning, all of this is built on advanced semiconductors, and Beijing is quite determined to make itself wholly independent of any other market for those semiconductors, and in ways that would also make us increasingly dependent on China.
For more on this, let's bring in a guy who knows a thing or two about China, Gordon Chang. He's the author of the book, The Great U.S.-China Tech War. Gordon, thank you for joining us. I'm very fond of saying that we have helped create this problem by integrating the Chinese into our economy. This is very tricky, I know, because we don't want China getting ahead, but they are the world's largest consumers of semiconductors, and blacklisting them could impact American companies. Is there any way at this point to kind of walk the line here?
I think there are a number of things that we need to do, Tom, and one of them is to just prohibit the importation into the U.S. of Chinese semiconductors. They had a great July. Their shipments were up 41.3% year on year. And that shows that they are actually churning out a lot of semiconductors. Now, they've got some problems. They can't make the world's most sophisticated chips. Neither can we, by the way. Those are made in Taiwan. But there's a lot we can do to undercut the Chinese. And one other thing, China wants to buy the biggest fab in England. And I think that we should be working very hard with the Boris Johnson government to make sure approval does not go forward for that acquisition.
In 2019, the Trump administration began banning or severely restricting Chinese companies from buying certain components from U.S. companies without government approval. This has been a practice that the Biden administration has continued and expanded. In response, Chinese companies have been building stockpiles to safeguard production lines. Gordon, is China aiming to kind of hold the rest of the world hostage through this semiconductor trade or trade through other products?
Well, they try to do that through all their products. And we know that semiconductors are critical because they're one of the 10 sectors that were listed in the Made in China 2025 program, which was Xi Jinping's way of trying to dominate that sector. So clearly, we know that this is at the top of their list to make sure that those chips are made on American soil.
Yeah, you know, the supply chains are a real issue, and we don't have domestic control of supply chains for a lot of critical technologies. You talk about EVs. China controls 80% of the world's lithium market right now, and President Biden wants people to buy EVs. Well, that would be a boon to China if we don't do it here, if we don't make that stuff here. China is also working to infiltrate a variety of other U.S. industries, including food production and energy resources. By the start of 2020, Chinese owners controlled about 192,000 agricultural acres in the United States, worth nearly $2 billion. Lots of foreign countries hold land in America, Gordon, as you know, but not a communist country or our biggest strategic competitor. I just got back from Oklahoma. There are farmers out there talking about the Chinese and foreign involvement in energy, in agriculture, even the beef markets. What can and should be done about this?
This is a simple one, at least in terms of stating it, and that is to prohibit Chinese purchases of U.S. land, to prohibit Chinese purchases of U.S. companies. And we were asleep at the switch where we allowed the Chinese to buy all of this stuff. And although this will remain in our land, whoever in our country, whoever owns it, nonetheless, China can do a lot of damage to us. So I believe that we should be using CFIUS, the Committee on Foreign Investment in the U.S. We've enhanced the rules. We need to enhance them even further. And we should just make sure that China doesn't buy this land. Yeah. Remember, they also bought a huge chunk of land near Laughlin Air Force Base in Texas.
That's right.
And God knows what's going on there. But that should never have been permitted.
Real quick, Gordon, because I've just got about 15 seconds. If Washington won't act on these policies, do you think that it's time that states actually acted to prevent Chinese incursions, basically, into these industries and from and buying land and other critical assets?
One word answer: yes, states must act.
All right, Gordon Chang, thank you so much.